Bienvenidos and welcome back to Puro Pinche Gol, the place we discuss all things USMNT y la selección mexicana. My name is Adrian, and joining me once again my co-host Tocayo, Adrian. Adrian, what's good, man?
Hey, how's it going, dude? Friday night, freaking ready to do this, dude. I've been waiting for this tough week at work, but here we are, al pie del cañón.
Yeah, man, tough week for me as well at work, but here we are, like you said, to do a fun episode, man. As you guys know, Chicharito has returned to Liga MX, to where it all started with Chivas, we kind of were discussing that and kind of discussed, he's obviously Mexico's top scorer ever. He's one of the greats for Mexico. Wouldn't it be fun to kind of do a ranking of our top 10, in our opinion, Mexico players of all time? This is going to be probably controversial. Obviously, there's a lot of really quality Mexico players, throughout the history that aren't going to make our top 10 list. But definitely let us know in the comments if you agree with us and or you think we have kind of a different opinions and tastes from what you guys think. But we'll start off at number 10 and go down all the way to the best. And at the end of that video, we'll mention some honorable mentions that we think, barely missed out on the top 10 ranking. Number 10, this is probably one of the controversial ones here right away. Hector Herrera here, man. The player who is currently playing still, obviously he's playing in MLS with Dynamo, and he had a pretty stellar career in Europe, which is probably what got him on this list.
Yeah, Chache. I think we had this discussion. He made it to the list, right? It's nice that he made it. He had a very decent career in Europe. I was surprised when I was looking at his accolades that he only won La Liga Portugal once. But in my opinion, he has one of the highest accolades that Mexico has ever won, which is the gold medal in 2012. So I think that's one of the reasons why we have him here on this list, is because it's hard to find another player with such a high accolade. If we remove that, I think the next one is Copa Confederaciones back in like 1999 or whatever. Other than that, is nothing but Gold Cups. And when we all know what a Gold Cup is now.
Yeah, the Copa Confederaciones 1989 win was probably the highest trophy that Mexico has won, other than a Gold Cup, right? One that really signifies a lot. But yeah, I agree with you, man. I mean, what did he win? He won a Liga in Portugal with Porto. He won a La Liga in Atlético de Madrid, which is a big one, in the time where Barcelona and Real Madrid were dominating. He obviously, this is way lower on the scale, but he's won a U.S. Open Cup. Like you said, he won the Olympic Cup, the Olympic gold medal, and he won a Gold Cup with Mexico in 2015. I'm surprised that's the only one he's won with Mexico. But yeah, Hector Herrera, man, there, number 10 on our list.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on, number 9, kind of going a little retro here, back in the 90s. Luis Garcia, man, player who obviously, again, kind of stands out here because he, in a time when many of the players in Mexico were playing their football in, primarily La Liga Mexicana, Liga MX as it's known now, he was out there playing in Spain, Atlético Madrid, Real Sociedad, but also obviously a player who did it big with in Liga MX with Pumas. Maybe not as many accolades as HH, but he was definitely one of the founders or the trailblazers in one of the first players of that era to go to Europe and to do it pretty well out there. He obviously won the Gold Cup in 1996, and I think he won a couple Mexico Primera Divisiones. But Luis Garcia, number 9.
He was also part of that. I think one of the, I'm not sure if it was the first one, but he was part of a Mexican squad who made it all the way to the Copa-America final. They lost it, but it wasn't an easy feat for Mexico. I think it was maybe the first or the second time they got invited to the competition, and they show up with a screamer, dude. So yeah, he's a great example of when a time when we had nothing but Liga MX players in Mexico representing at a World Cup, he was the outlier. Of course, we all know him more for his now commentator career as El Doctor Garcia, and I really hope that we don't get a lot of bad bad comments or anything like that because he was in some controversy with his wife.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we don't condone that. If we want to look as a player, yes, I think he's definitely a Mexico legend, and yeah, all nothing but screamers with this guy.
Yep. Luis Garcia, number 9. Number 8, another one that I think these probably last 3 on this list are the controversial ones. I don't think there's going to be much controversy in the top 7 other than maybe order. But number 8 here, another player who is known for his stellar career in Europe, especially there in Germany, Pavel Pardo, man. A player who, at a time where the game was transitioning and becoming very physical, he was a very short, very slow, non-physical player, but who dominated the midfield with his vision, his distribution of the ball. Pavel Pardo, obviously, you know, a legend, having won the Bundesliga with Stuttgart in a time where that was primarily won. I mean, it's still even primarily won by Bayern Munich, and obviously known for primarily for winning the Confederations Cup in 1999, one of Mexico's biggest feats.
Yeah, and he always El Perro Bermúdez always used to say he had those dardos envenenados whenever he was about to do a cross or a free kick from or as I guess as a centro, right? Um, I think he's a good representation of the transition of Mexico from the '90s to the early 2000s. He had a very quiet but distinguished career with Stuttgart in a time when not that many Mexicans were out there. He had a great Confederations Cup in 2004 under the direction of Ricardo La Volpe, and that's how he got propelled to Stuttgart. I would have loved to see him remain longer in Bundesliga, but his legacy lived on through Sami Khedira. Sami Khedira learned how to play next to Pavel Pardo. So, hey man, he had an impact on the world scene, you know?
Yeah, one of the obviously one of the Real Madrid's best midfielders of the past
Hmm.
decade, right? Sami Khedira. Yeah, I mean, definitely. I forgot
Exactly.
he was super young when he was playing alongside Pavel Pardo. Um,
Exactly.
but yeah, Pavel Pardo having an impact there on the world stage. Number 7, player known for his time at Santos, player known for that amazing header against Italy in the World Cup, Jare Borgetti, one of Mexico's best strikers ever produced. Definitely, I think top 3. Um, and yeah, I mean, Jare Borgetti, what can be said about, I think he was before Chicharito came and broke his record. He was Mexico's top scorer. Am I correct?
That you are right, and he also was the first Mexican player to ever be featured on the Premier League. So I know he went to Bolton Wanderers, but those were the old Bolton Wanderers who were not necessarily a bad team. They were, middle of the table, not too bad.
Yeah, back then in the
Uh,
Premier League. Yeah. Hmm.
exactly. And so he was the first Premier League Mexican player out there. That says a lot. It's a very competitive team. Sorry, very competitive league. It's not easy to get in. You have to be like a regular feature for your national team. And the fact that he was out there and fighting for a spot, even becoming a starting 11 player, says a lot. Um, and as you said, his Mexican career can be summed up at that one game against Italy in 2002 World Cup. I don't think he got better than that. That was perhaps the highest peak of his career as a national player. Maybe 2004 with the other players and Ricardo La Volpe. But yeah, top scorer. Kind of a legend in Liga MX. He opened the door for Mexicans in Premier League. Um, and as a pundit, I don't like him that much, but I did enjoy
Yeah.
him as a player.
Yeah, he's an average pundit at best, but definitely a legend. Santos Laguna's top scorer with 205 goals. He won the Primera División in Mexico in '96 and 2001, won the Gold Cup in 2003, and he was the top scorer in the Liga MX in 2000 and 2001. So definitely a legend, Liga MX legend for sure, and Mexico legend, all the same there. Moving on to number 6 here. I think the only goalkeeper we have on the list. No, it's not Jorge Campos, but it's Guillermo Ochoa. Memo Ochoa here. I think he distinguishes himself from all other goalkeepers. You know, Mexico has had good goalkeepers in the past, right? El Conejo Perez, Memo Ochoa, Jorge Campos, what's his name, Osvaldo Sanchez. But Guillermo Ochoa is the only one that has really done it long term and for a long time for most of his career in Europe. Granted, he has not always been at the best places to where he has a quality defense. We've seen him be scored on a lot, especially in Italy. But he's pretty much played a lot of his career in Europe, and he's played for Mexico now. How many years? Over 15 years. So yeah, Guillermo Ochoa, the only goalkeeper we have on the list, but I think he undisputably the best goalkeeper for Mexico, and 19 years as a seleccionado.
Yeah, man. I mean, I don't think anyone should have the decency to contest this. To be completely frank with you, we all know that he's perhaps one of the most scored on players in maybe Serie A in the Ligue 1. But man, you gotta respect the hustle. The fact that he's almost what 40 years old and he went back to Europe to be the starting keeper for a Serie A team, that has to say a lot. Unfortunately, he wasn't. He hasn't gone, or he was very unlucky in certain parts of his career, like in 2010, where he should have been the starting keeper, and he was benched ahead of, or his freaking Javier Aguirre preferred Conejo Perez ahead of him. And then he had that very unfortunate event getting Clembuterol and not being able to get a transfer to PSG. I think that would have changed his career significantly. But oh well, he did what he could with what he had, and there's no denial that he's the best goalkeeper that Mexico has ever produced.
For sure. And just the longevity of that, man. Crazy to see him still playing here. 2024, and he made his debut with La Selección in 2005. So Guillermo Ochoa maybe he has one more World Cup in him. Now you get into the top five, where I think everybody, for the most part, is going to be in agreement with us. Maybe just not the order here, but number 5, Cuauhtemoc Blanco, man. The now turned politician, America legend. Deserving of a top 5 spot, don't you think?
I think yes, he definitely has to be in the top 5 on anyone's historical top 10 for Mexico's national team. And I'll tell you this, and here's the reason why. At some point in time, he was the vivid representation of what every single Mexican wanted to be. He grew up in Tepito, which is one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in Mexico City. He went on to play with. I think he started at America's Academy. He got loaned out to Necaxa. He was part of that Necaxa who was big in the 90s. He went back to America. He won the league with America, and he became you know a legend almost automatically. This guy was controversial. This guy was good with his feet. We all know he had a hunchback, but man, he even used it as a resource on the pitch to make passes, to grab the ball from a from height, you name it. He was just a completely different player amongst the entire roster of Mexican nationals out there, man. I always wanted him to wear a Tigres jersey, but unfortunately, he always said that was perhaps one of those jerseys that he will never wear in Liga MX. But what else is there to say? He embodies, or used to embody, what the Mexican dream was, to become a national, professional soccer player, and go from nothing to legend status with very few years.
Yeah, and that was the years where we were talking about this before starting to record. Mexico maybe didn't have a lot of players in Europe. I think we counted 3 at that time, between
Mhm.
1998 to 2006, 7-ish, around that time. But the players that played in Liga MX, that played for La Selección, played with heart, and all those guys, like, they punched above their weight. They would play big teams, Germany, Argentina, etc., and produce good results because they played with passion, they played with heart. And Cuauhtemoc Blanco, yeah, he had a hunchback, but it was from carrying La Selección for so long. And as we remember, man,
Yes.
Remember he did the Guatemala where he got it between his legs and jumped and
Yes, of
got it between
course.
two players. That guy. But yeah, the legend. He is definitely a top five player here for La Selección. Um, and we move to arguably, not arguably, the top goal scorer for Mexico at number four, Javier Chicharito Hernandez, the player that is now back in Liga MX with Chivas for his swan song here. What can we say about him?
Um, I mean, first of all, he's back, quote unquote, with Chivas, but he won't play until week 10, I think. Well, Jornada 10, and he's still injured from, he had a very serious injury on his knee. But anyways, regardless, I want to preface this with saying that I'm not a Chicharito fan, but I do have to accept the fact that he had a very good career in Europe. Um, Specifically during his time in Bayer Leverkusen. I think Bayer Leverkusen is where we really got to see Chicharito's true level at the game. I think at Bayer Leverkusen that's where he felt the most comfortable. It was a league that fitted him. It was a team that fitted him. He was the star of the team. So I think Top Chicharito is Bayer Leverkusen, and there's no lie. I mean, he is the top scorer for Mexico, no denial. That's a fact. Um, he he's perhaps the closest that Mexico has gotten to having a Class A player in the last, I don't know, ever since Rafamarquez retired. So I think it's deserved that he's part of the top four in our list.
Yeah, a player who, like you said, I mean, Bayer Leverkusen was kind of when he was the star forward, right? When he was at Manchester United, he was obviously playing behind Robin van Persie. Um,
Berbatov.
the Berbatov, that's who it was. Yeah, that was like, who was that other guy? When he was at Real Madrid, he was obviously behind Cristiano Ronaldo, Benzema, all these guys, right?
Benzema.
Um, Sevilla, was he Sevilla or Valencia? Who was he with in
He was at Sevilla.
Sevilla?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he was kind of
Hmm.
towards the end of his European career at that point. West Ham as well, but Bayer Leverkusen is really where he was the guy, right? And he did really
Hmm.
well. Obviously, he had great moments for Manchester United, for Real Madrid. He won the Club World Cup with Real Madrid. He won the Premier League with twice with Manchester United. He would always be clutch against Chelsea, which is what I remember him for. Um,
Unfortunately.
yeah, but yeah, I mean, Mexico's all-time scorer, man. Chicharito Hernandez, 52 goals for Mexico on 109 caps, and yeah, now finishing his career, we think, with Chivas. Um, top three, man. We're top three time. Number three. This one might be a little controversial, but it
Mhm.
is Andres Guardado, the long-term player that's been playing most of his career in Europe. Um, has many accolades with La Selección Mexicana. Is one of the, I guess, the reason he is so high up on our list is just because of his longevity, right? He played 179 caps in Mexico. He played at PSV. He played at Betis. He played at Leverkusen, Valencia. But he's obviously, I forgot. I mean, who can forget his Deportivo La Coruña days, right? That's where he went first
Mhm.
after Atlas.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, Andres Guardado definitely probably besides the top two, maybe the most distinguished European career here in Europe.
Agreed, and I think if you look at the entire or all the his team roster, right? He was in Deportivo La Coruña, where he left as a historic or legend
Yeah,
status player. Um,
helped
his
them up.
stints at Bayer Leverkusen and Valencia. Yeah, exactly. He stood with them. They went up with him, and then he moved on. But if you look at his time with Bayer Leverkusen and Valencia, that time wasn't great. But at PSV, he was stellar, also legend status. With Real Betis, also legend status. To me, the reason why I have him so high in this list, and I agree with us putting him on a top three, is because if we remove Hugo Sanchez and Rafa Marquez, right, who are arguably the best players that Mexico has ever produced, Andres Guardado is perhaps the prototype career that most Mexicans should aim for, where he knew where he understood his talents, he understood where he was at, and he understood when he had to punch his weight. Right? He was He was never a player who thought who felt or thought deserved to be at a bigger team or at a bigger league. He understood where he was and he made the most out of his talent, dude. He realized that he wanted to remain competitive. He had to go to maybe smaller teams at big leagues and remain relevant, and that's what he did. You know, with Real Betis, with PSV, even the times at Valencia and Bayer Leverkusen, those were challenges or risks that he took to remain relevant and become more competitive.
Yeah, and another legend that's back in Liga MX now with Leon.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I agree with you, man. Oftentimes we see players forcing their way out, like Cesar Montes, Cesar Montes, but and trying to move, thinking they're better than the team, or trying to force their way out to a bigger club. But he, like you said, stuck with Depor, helped them move up, moved to a slightly bigger club. That was still on his level, not something necessarily where he'd move and just be benched the whole time, right? He knew how to find those moves where
Mm-hmm.
he'd be a starter, he'd be part of, like, getting minutes, and he had the an ability that he hardly got injured, man. He had a very healthy career, and that helped him a
Mm-hmm.
lot for La Selección, having made all
Yeah.
those 179
Bro,
caps.
because he understood that he had to stop partying. He had to take care of himself. Take this seriously as a job because that's what it is. So that's why I think it's the archetype that every single Mexican player should aim to.
Yep. All right, man. And there's Guardado number 3. Now we get to the top 2. As you said, kind of gave a spoiler there. We obviously know who the top 2 are. Maybe you guys won't agree with our ordering of them, but number 2, at least for us here, is the best forward, the best striker Mexico has ever produced by a long shot. Hugosanchez, Real Madrid legend. And I think the only reason we have him as number 2, not number 1, is because his underperformance for eltri. He
Mm-hmm.
was a player who, at the time, he was the only player, the only star player for Mexico. Mexico was full of Liga MX players, and it was just him being, the top 5 years in a row winning the golden boot in La Liga, and he just wasn't a fan of playing for El Tri, man. He only made 58 caps for El Tri, scoring 29 goals. If you compare his production for El Tri versus production for Real Madrid, it's just different day and night, right? So, Hugo Sanchez, amazing career in Europe. One of the greatest players of all time. One of the greatest forwards of all time. La Liga champion 5 times. I could go on and on with his accolades. He won the Liga MX quite a few times as well. But Hugo Sanchez, man, what do you let loose? What do you got for us about him?
I mean, it's albeit one of the two classic players that Mexico has ever produced. Unfortunately, he was unable to make a statement with Mexico at any point in time. And it was a combination of things. I personally don't remember seeing him play with Mexico because he was playing before my time. But a bunch of my uncles always keep on saying that, well, he always showed up for Mexico with a pissed off face or a smuggy face, and even going to say comments like, well, I'm not playing with any stars whatsoever, like no one's at my level, essentially just
Yeah,
being very arrogant, I guess, in a way. And we all know that he has always been like that, right?
yeah,
It isn't big news. Um, but one of the things that I just want to say is that the most impressive thing about Hugo Sanchez is if you look at most of his goals, he was a one touch, first touch kind of a scorer. He believed that dribbling was a waste of time and that he should focus on, his shots as well as reactions inside the box. And take a look at all of his, I guess, stats with Real Madrid. And I think he's perhaps in La Liga, the top scorer, if you take in consideration nothing but first touches, right, or one touch goals. You name it, dude. Crosses, he will dribble. He will do a freaking chilena. Shots from afar, he had the freaking power to do so. Um, it was very odd to see him dribble because he knew that wasn't his specialty. His specialty was being in the correct spot at every single time, and having that finesse to get up and score with just one touch.
Yeah, the guy I'm about to mention, he played before our time. Obviously, I just know him from highlights, but he reminds me a lot of Hugo Sanchez's goals remind me of Johan Cruyff's goals. A lot of
Mm.
very just first touch, maybe just takes
Yeah.
one touch to beat a defender and then hits the ball. Doesn't do a lot of dribbling, was just the first touch kind of guy, like you said, which he kind of revolutionized that in a time where it was a lot of you were a striker, you had to dribble, right? He just received the ball and whatever you know or your shoulder, head, or whatever he would find a way to put in the back of the net. Hugo Sanchez definitely the best striker Mexico's ever produced, and an absolute legend. Which leads us to number one, Rafa Marquez, the player who I think stands out over Hugo Sanchez because of his accolades, not just for his club, but also for Mexico, having made 147 appearances for Mexico. Obviously, we know him for his time in Monaco, his time in Barcelona. Um, Grew up in the youth career at Atlas and retired at Atlas there after spending some time with and New York Red Bulls, Leon, etc. But yeah, he was a player who started for a very competitive Barcelona squad at the time. Won 4 La Ligas, won the 2 Champions Leagues. Was a hand in hand there with Puyol as the center backs for a star-studded Barcelona side. Rafa Marquez, man, what more can you say about him?
I mean, he was part of the Barcelona, right? With freaking Carles Puyol, Ronaldinho, Deco,
Vidal, uh-huh. Henry,
Samuel Eto'o.
mm-hmm. All those
I
guys.
think like the worst player there was Victor,
Victor
what was
Valdez.
his name? Yeah, Victor Valdez. But that goes to show how good of a player Rafa Marquez was. He had a good sense of it on the pitch. He understood when to move forward, when to keep himself on the defense. He was good as a center back. He was good as a central defensive midfielder. The fact that he was 30 something and he went back to Europe after playing with Leon, and I think I don't know if he was part of the bicampeonato, but he won one of those bicampeonato championships with
He
Leon.
won both of them. Yeah.
He won both of them. Damn.
Mhm.
So here we go. I think the biggest smudge in Rafa Marquez's career is all those times that he lost his mind with
Yeah.
Mexico,
Hmm.
like in 2002 against the USMNT, and other crucial against Argentina in 2006,
Hmm.
I think, or 2010, one of those years. Regardless, he was always losing his mind on those
Red
kind
cards.
of
Yeah.
clutch games. But other than that, I mean, he a stellar career, long one in Europe. I think he's also a good example of how to progressively move up in your career, going from a Liga MX to a decent sized team, and then showing your worth, moving up, and keeping yourself competitive. Nothing to say, but just stand up and clap for his marvelous career. And man, he's one of those all players that I nostalgically miss. He's a To me, he's a representation of what football really is.
Yeah. A player that Mexico is really missing right now. Somebody of that
Hmm.
caliber.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's definitely our top 10 right there, man. Before we wrap up, I wanted to give some honorable mentions that we kind of mentioned here and that didn't make the list. But, our Mexican legends in their own right. Tomas
Hmm.
Boy, Claudio Suarez, El Matador Luis Hernandez, Jorge Campos, who you guys know for his jerseys, Spina, the Brazilian, Bojo Bautista, Gerardo Torrado, just a couple that had standout careers. We could keep going with this list on and on for honorable mentions. Ramon Morales, stuff like that, right? Good players
Nacho
that,
Ambriz.
that just really were standout, but weren't close enough to make it to this top 10 list. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, man, this was a fun one, Adrian. Man, as we wrap this episode up, dude, where can our listeners find us, brother?
They can always find us on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and turn on the notifications. You can also find us on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast on. You can also follow us on Instagram and also follow us on YouTube Shorts. We post stuff every now and then.
Yeah, make sure to follow us and let us know in the comments. This was a fun one, so we definitely want to hear from you guys. Do you agree with some of our top 10, all of our top 10, none of our top 10? And, do you think some of the honorable mentions should have been in the top 10? Definitely let us know. And let us know, which of these players, make you nostalgic. Do you remember growing up watching Rafamarquez or Hugo Sanchez? Or, just definitely let us know there, like interacting with you guys. Adrian, man, another good episode with you, brother. I'll see you in the next one, man.
Always a pleasure to take it easy.
Likewise, man. See ya.